Welcome everybody. Happy to have with us two of the members of our Government Affairs Committee, Pat Russell, who is Chairman of our Government Affairs Committee, and Hope Corrier, a longtime member of the committee. What we're releasing this morning is a major annual project of our Government Affairs Committee. It is our annual legislative survey. We've been doing this for several years. The committee goes out every year and surveys the North Country business community to find out their opinions on what we see as the timely issues, federal and state in particular, also some regional issues, to provide guidance to the committee on what our positions should be, but also not just to ask their opinions on issues, but to ask them to prioritize those issues. Because it's one thing to find out that 90% of business feels this way on 11 different questions, but within those, what are the number one, number two, number three priorities, the things that will tell this committee the things that it should be spending most of its time on and stressing in our advocacy efforts. I'm happy to report that we had a record response rate again this year. Every year we seem to achieve a new record. Over 1,400 surveys were sent out to businesses in Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties, and we had a 30% response rate this year, which is an absolutely incredible response for a blind mail survey to have that many sent back. In many surveys, a few percent response would be considered good and enough upon which to consider that you have a sample. To have almost a third of your surveyed businesses respond is gratifying to the committee, but also I suggest makes the results very insightful, very credible. It obviously isn't skewed by any few businesses when you have that strong a response, and therefore it should be a really good representation of where business is at. I'm going to share with you when we're done here, a complete set of all the questions and responses, so you don't need to hurry up and make notes and try to write these down, but let me highlight a few things beforehand. Then we'll turn to our Business Confidence Index, because what we also do every year is ask the business community out there what their expectations are for business this year, to get a sense, to take the pulse of the business community as to how good, bad, and different they think the economy in the North Country here is and what they expect their business outlook to be. And that becomes, again, a very significant, I think, indicator, particularly with that high response rate, as to how things are going. On state issues, the business community has told us that their top three priorities on state business issues, things pending in Albany this year, are as follows. Number one, that they want to see the enactment of further reductions in state business taxes. We believe what they're telling us is that the state has come a long ways in turning around the tax climate for business here, but this is still a relatively high tax state, and there's still more relief to be provided to enhance their competitiveness nationwide and globally. Number two, they endorsed state support for our Champlain-Hudson corridor as a focal point for economic development in the future. Very gratifying. It affirms this chamber is on the right track on their behalf in terms of pointing to this trade corridor, Montreal to Albany, not just as a transportation link, but as what really should be the focal point for economic development. And the regional business community has said yes, it's one of our top three priorities. The state should be focusing attention and resources behind that. And then number three, they said that they are very strongly supportive of additional reforms in workers' compensation in the state. We know we had some significant reforms a few years ago. Those have resulted in some significant reductions. There are some pressures now at play to push those rates back up. And those rates are still higher than many other comparable states. So the business community clearly is saying it's time for a second dose of reform. A number of other issues which I'll pass out to you later in terms of their responses. They did say that we should stand by the new Regents Performance and Diploma Standards now being applied in our schools. They did strongly endorse the reduction or reform of unfunded state mandates on schools and local governments as a way to provide relief for property taxes, and 98% expressed support for reducing electricity costs by eliminating the state gross receipts tax on electric bills, which is something before the state legislature this session. On federal issues, three priorities. And again, very gratifying that by a significantly wide margin, in fact it was 4-1 over the second priority, to give a sense of just how strongly this was highlighted as the number one priority. They endorse and call for the modernization and expansion of the U.S. border facilities at Champlain and the creation of a port of excellence. So we now have an affirmation very strongly, very resoundingly from the business community throughout the North Country that that is in fact not just important, but is their #1 federal priority this year, is to achieve what we have begun advocating, but still have a long ways to go. Second, the reduction of capital gains taxes and the indexation of capital gains taxes for inflation. And number 3, not surprising, given the very strong family farm and family business base we have here in this region, the elimination of federal estate and gift taxes for family businesses and farms to support smooth succession in those operations to the next generation. Again, a number of other findings, very strong support, as would have been expected, for repeal of Section 110 of the 1996 Immigration Act is another aspect of keeping that border open and flowing for us. Very strong support for bankruptcy reform, tightening the rules for filing bankruptcy and protecting creditors more than at present. Very strong support for enactment of more stringent controls on pollutants from the Midwest and other areas that are responsible for acid rain in the Adirondacks. So very strong support on that environmental issue. And also overwhelming support, 9-1, for approval of the state's inclusion in the Northeast Dairy Compact as a means of helping to stabilize and preserve our area's dairy farms. I suggest that's a very important recognition by the broad business community that agriculture is part of this region, is important to this region, and that the entire business community realizes that we are in partnership with the farm community on that issue, as well as others. On several regional issues, we did, as we have in the past, we queried the business community, particularly on several ongoing or pending projects, to get a sense of the depth and breadth of business community support. Overwhelmingly, the North Country business community numbers like 92%, 96% supported continued state and federal investment in upgrading the Olympic facilities in the Lake Placid area as an important part of our regional economy. Very strong support for the extension of natural gas in and through Essex and Franklin counties to support economic development in those areas. Very strong support for the encouragement of bilingualism, English and French, in new signage by public agencies in the North Country as a means of supporting both tourism and economic development. And very strong support for the enhancement of rail infrastructure in the region, particularly assisting in increasing the height clearances on CP Rail's main line through Clinton and Essex counties so that they can do double stacking as part of building our corridor effort. There was a little less strength of support for the so-called rooftop highway project. About 2-1 support, but that is significantly less than the overwhelming support expressed for the other projects. And unlike, frankly, any of the other projects in the survey, it was interesting to note that this particular question attracted a great many highly negative or skeptical comments written in about that project. So we obviously have a lot of discussion ahead of us in terms of the cost of that project and the practicality of that project in the view of many business interests. And I think it also reflects that they are judicious in their response to this. It isn't that, well, gee, here's 6 projects, so we're in favor of all projects, and everybody just checks off all the questions. It obviously reflected that there was some variance in support and some different attitudes toward the various projects. Very gratifying result, again, particularly the response rate. I don't know if we can ever hope to improve on 30%. I'm amazed to get that level of response. It shows, once again, that North Country business people have opinions, surprise, surprise, and they like to express those opinions, surprise, surprise. And when we ask them, they do respond, they do express those opinions. What happens with all of this now? Today we will be releasing these to all of our federal and state representatives, the governor, our state legislators, our U.S. senators, our U.S. congressmen from the North Country, providing it to them as input to them from the region. And it will be very actively cited and used in our advocacy efforts in Washington and Albany in particular. As you know, we were in Washington last week. We're down there frequently. We're in Albany frequently. We're down there working on behalf of the business community on the issues that they care about, which is one of the reasons I think they respond so heavily, is they know that it's not just another survey. The chamber takes what we tell them and they actually go out and do things about it. So it is important for us to send this in. And we assure them that the committee and the chamber will be going out and using the results, using what the business community has told us in our meetings, in all of our efforts in the months ahead, and doing everything we can to turn those expressions of opinions and priorities into action in the coming months. With that, North Country Business Confidence Index. Each year, as part of this survey, we ask the business community several questions to get a sense of business in the North Country, where it's headed, what expectations are. We ask all of those who respond to the survey to tell us whether their sales, their business operations are going to be up this year, the same, or down. We also ask them whether they expect their employment to be up, the same, or down. And then for some comparison, we ask them the same question about the state, whether they think the state economy is up, the same, or down, to get some sense of are they more confident in this area than the state, or less confident, to give it a comparison to something. As you'll see, this sign over here reflects last year's, to give you some comparison. Last year's survey for 1999, we had a very gratifying expression of confidence by the North Country business community in the economy at that time, 1 year ago this month. 96% expected business to be up or steady. Of that number, as you can see, 76% expected their business to be up last year. This year, we had equally as gratifying a result, but in fact, even a stronger expression of confidence in the direction and foundations of the North Country economy. And I'll ask our two committee members to unveil the results of this year's North Country Business Confidence Index for 2000. As you see, we have the same bottom line index number, 96%, but know how much stronger that number actually is. Rather than 76% of that number saying they expect their business to be up, which was already so strong, you almost wondered how could any economy have more confidence than to have more than 3/4 expecting their business to be up. But lo and behold, 85% this year expect their business to be up in the year 2000. 11% expect their business to be steady. What we see is a migration from businesses last year who expected their business to be steady into businesses now seeing growth and expecting their business to be up. Only 4% of businesses in this year's survey expect their business to be down. Really quite extraordinary, quite a significant and enlightening snapshot of what's happening here in the North Country. In the area of the employment question, 63% expect to increase their employment at their business or operation this year. Again, an incredible number, something I'm sure Hope is very happy to hear about. We're going to keep her very busy this year. 2/3. Part of that tells us, too, is that, as last year's results, which were similar, did, is that employment growth and some of the stresses and demands and challenges that is bringing to the North Country for the first time in our history transcends the big companies that we see in the newspaper all the time. The new openings or the expansions at this company or Bombardier getting that contract or so on. That it ripples all the way down through the small businesses, most who make up the bulk of the response to this survey. We know out there, therefore, there are a lot of businesses that may be adding 1 person or 2 people or 4 people this year. That all collectively adds up as well. 32% expected their employment picture to remain the same. Only 5% expected their employment at their operation to go down this year. For the state economy, 79% expect the state economy to be up this year. 14% expect it to be the same. 7% expect the state economy to be down this year. Interesting. We now have probably the reverse of what we may have found in years past before we started doing this survey, that people are actually more confident here in the North Country about the North Country than they are about the state at large. Although the numbers for the state at large are very significant, I think it's interesting that they are even more strong for this region. I think it speaks of something underlying the region here in terms of confidence and optimism about the future that's expressing itself above and beyond any feelings they have about the nation or the state at large. With that, I'm going to pass these out to you, but I'll also ask Chairman and my other committee member if they'd like to add anything. Pat?
We're just happy that, it appears the national economy is finally catching up with the North Country. I think we saw that last year, and this year looks like the year 2000 is going to be the same way. So we're very happy with it.
I don't really have anything other. than what's already been said to add. I think, I feel that I deal with a lot of businesses, and I can certainly get that sense on a day-to-day basis that there is a lot of confidence, particularly in this area.
Questions?
I missed the first few minutes, my apologies. What would you attribute?
Why did you miss the first?
No,
Before we accept your apology.
our reporter's mother's in the hospital, so I'm pinch hit for her. What would you have attributed to such an increase, I mean, in terms of businesses going up from 76 to 85? You know, I'm not much of a mathematician, which is why I got into journalism, but what would you see as the three biggest factors as to why there is more confidence? I mean, you talk about a stronger economy, but anything local specifically?
Well, part of it certainly is what's happening nationally, and the fact that increasingly we have seen that over the last couple of years coming here. That the areas like the North Country are always kind of lag behind national trends, but those national trends are coming here. Those good times, that increased employment, increased purchasing, consumer confidence finally is showing itself here. So partly it's finally rippling through and coming to our area and being reflected generally in business, as we see in sales tax receipts and so many other indicators out there. People are working more, there's more household income, they're more confident, they're spending more, all of that helps. But I also think, and I asked my two colleagues to jump in afterwards, but I think there is a sense of optimism here. I think people are realizing that the Plattsburgh area in particular continues to lead this entire state and has for several years in the growth of manufacturing jobs. And the almost incessant release of good news that happens here. It doesn't mean there isn't occasional bad news too, but there always is. Some things will always be closing and downsizing and moving, but this area isn't used to having such an almost endless string of openings and announcements and good news that we've been having here over the last couple of years. And it's just, I think it's building a sense of momentum and a sense of confidence that, gee, maybe the North Country isn't in fact that isolated location of 20 years ago. Maybe we are now globally connected. Maybe good things are happening here. Maybe what's happening at the Air Force Base is good. Maybe maybe that's good news and not bad news anymore. Maybe we've recovered from the effect of the exchange rate. Certainly, if you look at sales tax receipts and what's happening out there in Clinton County, it gives every sign that there's more retail activity and sales tax being generated now than in 1991-92. So I think it's a collection of all of those things. It's hard to find dark signs in there, frankly. And sometimes North Country people, if it's there, they'll find it. But it's becoming harder to find it.
How about a three-part question? How many people were surveyed? How many businesses were surveyed for this again?
Over 1,400 in the three-county area, and we had a 30% response rate.
30%, you said?
Yep.
And at this point in time, how many people are, at least in a general figure, are currently employed in that region? Or is there where? I mean, you're dealing with.
I can't
you're
tell you
talking about increased
regionally, I can
employment.
tell you that collectively, all of our chamber membership, which that represents, from what they tell us, collectively, they employ about 45,000 people
In 3 counties, that?
in the 3 counties.
Of these 1,400 people you
Yes.
surveyed? 35,000?
About 45,000.
Now, last year's figures, you say 76% of the businesses surveyed felt like their business would go up and et cetera. Now, how much of that optimism came to fruition in that year and this year?
Oh, I have to go back, but it took a significant jump. It was.
I would think if you look at this year's result, it indicates that they met their goals for last year, and they're even more optimistic that they're going to continue to grow. So I would say probably out of that 76%, probably most of them met that goal.
I know
That's why they're so positive.
the prior year's total index was like 82%, and it had jumped to 96, which was rather startling last year. And if you had asked me, I would have kind of predicted ahead of time, well, it's probably going to stay around 96. I don't know how you get much better than that. And in fact, the total didn't, but it was surprising to see that internally there still was even a strengthening of confidence.
As the years go by and you put out these reports, how accurate are they proving to be, and can you use them as an indicator of things to come?
Yeah, well, in terms of accuracy, they can't help but be accurate because all they are is an expression of what people think and they feel about their business, so that inherently is accurate. because it's a reflection of that. It isn't an assessment of something external. It's how do I feel about my business? How confident am I? Do I think my business is going up or down? So it's an expression of that. The fact that it keeps going up, at least over the last couple of years, as Pat pointed out, seems to affirm that they were feeling correctly, because they didn't come to the next year and say, oh gosh, it isn't so good after all. So you see something kind of backsliding. Instead, there seems to be a sense that they're affirming, yeah, I felt good last year, I still feel good, and some of those who maybe felt good, I'm not going down, business is okay, but now are kind of moving up into that category. Well, now I feel even better, I think my business is up.
Have we filled the Canadian void with the high?
We have filled all of the voids. We have filled the Air Force leaving void, we have filled the Canadian exchange rate void. Does that mean the economy looks the same as it did then? Of course not. It has been filled in different ways. The retailing picture in Clinton County is not the same retailing picture in 1992. We're not filled with ladies' clothing stores, attracting ladies from Montreal to come down here and save money and buy clothes. But obviously, retail numbers, what's happening in the retail sector and sales tax receipts being generated and so on, tell us that broadly speaking, that retail activity that was lost in that sector has been replaced in other ways. And in terms of, for example, the Air Force Base, I mean, we know the number of jobs. We know what's happened out there in the private sector. We know that the employment picture here in the North Country is probably the best it has ever been in North Country history. So we certainly have replaced those things.
Safe to say, you're talking about optimism and people considering this area as more than just some rural backwoods region. What would you cite as the primary draw for manufacturing businesses and even for retail to stay in this area or to expand in this area?
Location. Absolutely location. We are in an age in this new century where location matters, and matters differently than it mattered 20 years ago, but matters more than ever. We are in a world that is moving faster, where everything has to be just in time, where factories and suppliers don't keep any inventory on hand anymore. Things have to get to them, in the door, out the door, get places quickly. And that makes logistically strategic locations the winners of the future. And to be logistically strategic now isn't necessarily the same as it was 20 years ago. Some places that were logistically strategic 20 years ago are going to be losers now. And some places that were non-strategic, still where they always were, but suddenly the paradigm has changed, as has happened in our area, and now suddenly find themselves, instead of being isolated, being strategic. We are now, and you're tired of hearing me say this, we are Montreal's U.S. suburb. It changes the whole picture. Montreal is now the #1 Atlantic seaport in North America. Montreal is now the place that is in the top echelon of almost every cutting-edge technology in North America, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, information technology, and we are part of that. We are hooked up through this corridor, as our business community has said. Vitally important to us to maintain this, vitally important to fix those border facilities. Why are they saying that? Because they realize as business people that those are the things, those are the only potential impediments, and also are the carrying vehicles, if you will, that suddenly make us globally connected. They make Plattsburgh now, in the Plattsburgh North Country region, actually a very strategic and enticing place to be if you're a European or Asian company looking to enter the North American market. You aren't now looking at a map and saying, well, here's New York City, and oh my gosh, how would I ever get anything in and out of there? That isn't any place I'd want to be. No, the map is turned upside down. Now it's, oh, that's right next to Montreal, and it's at one of the top 3 gateways into the North American marketplace, and Montreal is the fastest and most economical way to get in and out of North America if I'm in Europe. It's just all of that and more. That's where it's at in the future, is logistics. And those places that aren't connected logistically to be fast, to be just in time, to be convenient, have got a real challenge ahead of them. And then add the whole speed of communications as well, and lo and behold, we have not just 1 now, but 3 fiber optic systems through the Plattsburgh region. Why is that? It's because we're between New York and Montreal. So even on that plane, we are connected in ways that other regions are going to be fighting to be connected for many years to come, and we're already there.
How did you select the 1,400 businesses you would send the surveys to?
Our membership.
Does that include, is there a requirement for becoming a member, certain size, how many employees you have?
No, you come in the door and you join. pay your dues and you join.
And these are the same questions that were offered last year?
Not necessarily the same questions. We work with the committee to identify what we think are issues that will be on the table in the state legislature, in Congress this year that affect business, that we want to convey a sense of how the business community feels about those. Now, obviously, some of those issues play out over several years because they didn't get resolved last year. They're still on the agenda. Some things pop onto the agenda that weren't there.
No, but I'm sure it's here. What are some primary issues that businesses will have to contend with in the years to come?
Well, it's all pretty well outlined, in terms of the questions and the responses, but we asked them, so in addition to asking them a whole set of individual questions, the committee wisely realizes that that doesn't necessarily tell you what's really important to them. You can ask them a whole bunch of questions, and the business will tend to answer yes to most of them, and you get very high numbers, but how intensely do they feel about them? So that's why we asked them to identify their priorities, and as you'll see on your handout, they have very specifically identified 3 state priorities and 3 federal priorities, which really helps lend added voice to those as the things that are most important.
Gary, downside to any of this?
There's never a downside to getting a very good feel for what's important to business and where their position is on things.
Any surprises in this?
Even I was perhaps a little surprised at just how strongly they identified the port facilities at Champlain as being their #1 priority, how far and away that was their #1 federal priority. It affirmed everything we've been saying, but it was both gratifying and surprising the degree to which that popped up. And the fact that that then also ended up clearly translating itself on the state issues, where they popped up the state support for our whole corridor as
Yeah.
being one of their top 3 priorities too. There clearly is a very strong consciousness there of that connection that we have north and south on this corridor, and how important that is to their confidence in their future. Anything else?
Making it very hard for us to make a negative story. We're just going to sit right here and just be...
When did I ever make it easy?
I think we ought to leave and do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
2 avalanches in a week, that's too much.
I think we'll get started. This is truly a pleasure. It's an exciting day for this chamber, an exciting new venture for this chamber, and a direct response in terms of a venture to what our members, what the business community here in the North Country has been saying for some time, and saying with increasing loudness, if you will, and determination, which is the need to reduce electricity costs statewide, particularly here in the North Country, which is experiencing, as this sign shows, economic growth, business growth, manufacturing growth, all of which means we have even more businesses here than ever depending on electricity as one of the basic commodities supporting their day-to-day business, but also as a significant part of maintaining the bottom line that they need to maintain to be competitive statewide, nationally, and increasingly globally. In our recent survey of businesses in the North Country, a full 98% of businesses surveyed in the 3-county area expressed concern about electricity costs and expressed support for efforts to provide relief, provide reduction in electricity costs here in the North Country. The Business Council of the State of New York has identified this as their top priority this year in terms of increasing competitiveness for business in New York State to reduce electricity costs, in part by eliminating the state gross receipts tax, which the governor and legislature seem to be getting behind, but as just one piece of an overall effort that we need to go forward to find ways to reduce the bottom line cost of business in New York, both to keep businesses here, to keep those kinds of numbers that show businesses are growing here, and to be as attractive as we can be to those new kinds of businesses that we want to attract here. Many of which happen to be intensive electricity users. When you talk about high technology kinds of businesses, you're talking about increasing use of technology and equipment and manufacturing and communications equipment and so on that is electricity intensive, and where electricity is very much a matter on their minds when they think about where they want to do business. So while we work with the Business Council and others to do things in Albany, it shouldn't surprise any business in the North Country that this chamber isn't satisfied with relying on decision makers elsewhere to do what we need to have done. We go out and find ways to do things locally, from workers' comp to all kinds of other issues confronting business. If we're innovative, if we're smart, if we come together and work together, we can usually find a way right here and now on the ground where we can do something besides wait for somebody else to fix it for us. Electricity is no different. I am, as I said before, truly excited to be announcing today the launching of a new program by the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce covering all of Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties in upstate New York, the North Country Energy Alliance. What is the North Country Energy Alliance? It is a pool buying arrangement. It is acknowledging the fact that contrary to a very great misperception out there that we don't have deregulation yet, that in fact deregulation is already starting to kick in. And there already are savings to be had in electricity out there if folks come together and take advantage of the tools that are already on the table to save money on their power bills. And the longer that we all wait in areas like the North Country to do this means all that we are really doing as businesses is leaving money on the table instead of putting it in the business's pocket to use in other ways to support growth. We are coming together to bring our entire membership together to go out and jointly purchase, because the power is in bringing demand together, to jointly purchase electricity in a pool, in a bidding process, and we are able, starting tomorrow, to offer businesses in the North Country immediate, virtually assured savings. This is applicable in all areas covered by NYSEG and also in areas covered by Niagara Mohawk. I must point out it does not apply to areas or to customers served by municipal power companies. Nobody can beat those rates right now, including our program. So it doesn't apply there. But in most of the North Country that is served by NYSEG or NYMO, there are savings to be had, and there are savings to be had tomorrow. How is this possible? What you would need to do under present arrangements is to pull together a pool of buyers and go out in the marketplace and solicit bids and get offers that hopefully and almost assuredly will be less than the current electricity prices are that business is paying. Now, what we are fortunate to be in a position to do is to buy into, attach ourselves to a couple of deals that are already in place. So we don't have to go out there from scratch and try to get businesses in the North Country to just say, yeah, I'm interested in being part of a bidding process. I'm not sure if there's any savings or not, but include me in and we'll go out and see. Rensselaer and Saratoga County Chambers went out some time ago, did this, went out in the marketplace, put together an initial pool, and so already have existing contracts in place for NYSEG and NYMO customers. For NYSEG customers, there are average savings available of approximately 4% for most business users. In NYMO territory, there are smaller savings available, but still savings available. By attaching ourselves to our sister chambers' contracts, we don't have to wait to go through a bidding process. We can bring savings tomorrow as soon as a company signs a contract and starts taking advantage. Now comes the most exciting part of this, though. Not only are we going to bring immediate savings by attaching onto those contracts to those customers out there, but we are joining them together in a mega pool. Because the notion here that we're engaged in is to join with about a dozen of our major sister chambers, county and regional chambers, across upstate New York, who are also in NYSEG and NYMO territory, who are all doing the same thing. The intent is we're going to go out there, we're going to use this initial contract to pull together a pool of users, get them some immediate savings, but then, before the end of this year, pool all of those chambers together, make one big mega pool, and go back out. And it isn't rocket science to realize we go out with that kind of pool for next year, that whatever savings folks here that they're going to get now, they can be assured they're going to be the first ones in line to hook into those additional savings that are almost certain to kick in when we go back out in the marketplace. It's very simple. We have a very simple form. It's one page. All of business, not just business, a municipality, a church, a nonprofit organization, a hospital, an office, any kind of energy user out there except residential. We're not going there yet, but we may talk to you in the future about that. But we're going to start with business and organizations, and government entities. All they have to do is contact us. We'll send them one of these forms. We'll mail it to them. We'll fax it to them. They simply fill this out, and they put in their account numbers, so whether with NYSEG or NYMO, and they send this back. It doesn't obligate them to the program yet. It says, I'm interested in the program, and basically what it says is, if you can show me I'll save money, I'll sign up for it. Our consultants, Solerny and Boyd, and I'm going to call on them in a moment to answer some more detailed questions and provide a little more background. What they'll do with this is go to the utility, analyze the use, and then we'll come back to that business. ABC Pizza Parlor sends us this form from Ticonderoga, and we check this out. We'll come back and say, ABC Pizza Parlor, if you sign a contract, this is what we estimate your savings will be. So they'll know up front that it's worth their while to do. Then they make the decision. So doing this initial step to get the estimate doesn't obligate them. They can still say no if for some reason they decide they don't want to, or if there aren't savings. Although we suspect in most cases there definitely will be. So there's no reason for any business not to contact us. Get the form, find out what their savings are. I mean, why not find out? And then make the decision. Now, there's a lot of basic questions. And actually we'll send folks this as well. On the back of this yellow form, we've answered some of those basic questions. And the first ones that will occur to people, given that electricity deregulation is something totally new to them. And there's just some very obvious questions that folks will ask. I mean, what's happening here is somewhat akin to what happened with long distance and your dial tone in the whole telephone sector several years ago. There is an unbundling of services. And so what folks are used to having one provider, one company, one name that they see attached to their electricity bill, and one bill that comes to them for everything. For transmission, for generation, for maintenance, for service, for all the stuff that goes, for reading the meters, for everything that goes with getting that product and being able to put that plug in the socket and turn on their light. That's already breaking apart. Generation, the actual production and sale of the actual electricity is already well in the process of being separated from all of those other basic day-to-day functions. Getting it to your house, running the lines up and down the streets, servicing them when there's a break, there's an ice storm, the lines go down. Your utilities that you've always known are still responsible for that and still will be no matter who you actually buy your electricity from. So there's really no risk in terms of that. And they're already going to separate. Whether you want that to happen or not, it's in process, it's already happening. What will happen eventually, probably for most everybody, but immediately for those who take part in this program, is that you'll simply get two bills. You'll get one bill for all of those services, getting the electricity to you and the transmission stuff and all of that, which actually you're paying for now, and that part of your bill is going to be segregated out, and you're simply going to see it separately from the way you're used to maybe cutting down to this bottom line and thinking of that as your power bill. And then you're going to get a separate bill for your actual usage. And when you put the two together, therein you'll find the savings that we'll tell people they will experience. But there will be two separate bills. So a slight change, but a very slight change to get the kinds of savings that we're talking about. As I said before, frankly, the longer people wait to do this, if they're in either of those territories, they're simply leaving money on the table rather than taking advantage of it. There is no reason to wait. If there's some conservatism out there, and I know there is in the North Country business community, well, gee, I don't know, I haven't read enough about this yet, I don't know enough about it, I think maybe I'll wait and see how this factors out, and maybe I'll wait for some other people to do it so I can hear how it works out with them. They're kidding themselves. It's already here. All they're doing is leaving money on the table. It's tried and true. We can help walk them through it. We'll help them answer any of those questions or concerns they have, but there's no reason not to proceed. Our chamber and the others who are joined in this collaboration have retained an experienced and respected firm in Saratoga Springs, Solerny and Boyd. With us is Gordon Boyd, a partner of that firm, and they are the ones who will actually administer the program, the ones who will actually go out and do the bidding, the ones that will do that use analysis and get back with the numbers with companies. And the thing to understand here, the beauty of this is they work for us. They work for you. They work for our members. They're not working for the utility. They're not working for any potential provider out there who's in trying to sell their product and not being objective about what they may be pitching or trying to sell. They work exclusively on behalf of our chamber and our members to go out there, get the best deal, to make sure they're getting the best deal and that they're well taken care of. That's the difference between this setup and others. And I think what's exciting about this also is that it's an example of business using their chambers to come together in the best way that chambers can be used to collectivize their needs and their demands and concerns and go out there and fix it. With that, I'm going to call on Gordon to talk a little more about the details on this, and then we'll be happy to answer more detailed questions about how this will work.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, Gary. First of all, I'd like to say that we have a business that spans most parts of New York State. We work for a number of different associations and groups, in, not only in New York, but New Jersey and Pennsylvania as well, which have also deregulated their utilities. And we get our, people knock on our door all the time asking for our services, but we are at a point now where we can be somewhat selective about where we want to engage ourselves and where we're going to make our own efforts the most worthwhile. And we're just delighted to be involved with the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber, because you have a reputation that extends far to the south as an economy that's growing, and a chamber and a business community that is innovative and ready to move on to the next new thing. And that's really what's happening in the energy field right now. We used to be accustomed to these utilities where we had one integrated service. Now that we find out that the Earth is round, and that we can unbundle these things and we can shop for different elements to try to save money. And when Gary talks about saving 2, 3, or 4%, if you're in business, 2, 3, or 4% can add up pretty quickly. We have members of the other chambers, hotels that are saving thousands of dollars a year. We have hospitals and large healthcare institutions that are saving between $10,000 and $20,000 in a year. And we have the corner groceries and small independent businesses that are saving hundreds of dollars a year. And I don't know anybody. I was in a independent business like that myself many years ago, and I can't think of anything. Signing pieces of paper to put a few $100s in my pocket, it's a no-brainer. And again, we're tickled to be up here in the North Country, where you have a growing economy and a progressive business organization representing the chamber members. So I guess unless there's more that I can explain, we'll be happy to take some questions.
And we'll also introduce, representing the board here at the chamber, our Vice Chairman, Randy Beach. Randy, would you like to say something on behalf of the board and why we're in this venture, how important it is?
Thank you, Gary. On behalf of the board, this is something we've taken a close look at and studied and decided that this was certainly the future. And Gary has worked with us, and we've worked with him to bring the chamber and bring this region into the future, and we're there, and it's great. Thank you.
Questions? I'm sure there are going to be some questions about this program, how it works.
Why Rensselaer and Saratoga? Were those the first two? They approached you guys, or you guys approached them?
They went out and did the work, and I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of work to go out there and do and research and understand this and figure out who the best consultants are, and go out in the marketplace and do those first bids to go out and convince a bunch of businesses to come together and pool their demand without being able to tell them up front what the savings are. We've got it easy now.
Now, did you guys come up with, they meet with you guys first, or was proposed, you guys went down with it?
We did
Kind of went both ways.
We did a competitive procurement for them last year, and their members have been signing up now for several months. They thought this is such a great idea, we really should be bringing other chambers into it so we can even make the pool bigger and get more market leverage, because one of the main reasons to do this is electricity is now like any other commodity. If you can buy it in bulk or put a large demand for it together, you have a greater bargaining power when you're talking to suppliers. So our whole game here is to put a lot of demand together at one time and in one place, or scattered around the state certainly, but in one procurement, so that suppliers sharpen their pencils a little more.
And if it works at 2 chambers, then why not with a dozen chambers? And then why not pull them together instead of having it be chamber by chamber, on which basis you're always going to come up against a certain glass ceiling. Okay, you've probably pooled about as much as you're ever going to pool.
You're going to be saving the businesses out there money. Well, where do you make your money? You've got to make money on this.
As part of the supplier's agreement to participate in the chamber program, supplier agrees to a consideration that runs to the chamber, and we share in that.
I don't understand.
Well, there's a royalty
There's a
payment
royalty.
that the supplier pays to the program for our cost and the chamber's effort in pulling all these accounts together. So what we're offering to the supplier is a marketing channel, and what the supplier pays for is a royalty based upon the usage by the members that participate. So they pay a royalty back to the chamber, and we share with that.
So the more the usage, the more the savings.
Right.
And the more they
The
make.
more our royalty, which means their interest is squarely in saving,
Sure.
getting more members
Right.
in, and helping them save more.
But again, the individual customer won't accept the offers unless they're saving money. So that our whole, business is based upon getting the individual business people to see, oh, I'm going to save money, so I'm going to sign this. Now, they don't get charged separately for their participation in the program. Their opportunity to participate comes as part of their chamber membership, so they don't have to pay anything to get involved in the program, and they don't pay the royalty themselves out of their electric bill. Supplier pays it for the convenience of being able to get access to so many customers.
You're paid a percentage?
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's all built in.
1%, 2%?
It's in the low single digits, yeah.
Who's the
From 1
loser?
to, that's 1 to 9?
Low single digits.
Who's the loser in this deal?
There isn't any.
There are no losers. The supplier is looking for customers. The utility, the delivery company, which is around here mostly NYSEG, okay, is financially indifferent to where you buy your electricity. You can buy it through them at a regulated price, or you can go to a supplier like through one of our programs and save. So they're indifferent. It's a wash to the utility.
It's not less to them.
No, it doesn't affect, because they're just charging you for the delivery. If they buy the power for you, they're passing through a cost.
They have already, in fact, as all the utilities have done or in the process of doing, they have set up a separate entity, a separate business to be in this new competitive business. NYSEG Solutions is in that business, and in fact is the provider.
They won the procurement last year that we're.
So they have that
now-
chance to bid. So actually, it's in their interest to encourage businesses to get into this new culture and practice because it's here, and then have that chance to go out and successfully bid on it.
So you're constantly looking for new low bidders?
Yes,
Or suppliers?
we're always in the marketplace in different programs that we operate.
So if a business signs up, how long are they in for it? And what if a cheaper company comes along while they're signed up for it?
Right now, if a business signs up today, they'd be obligating themselves for about 12 or 13 months of service. Okay, and then after that.
I don't think people want to be switching around their users,
No,
month to month.
that's better than I thought it
And the electricity commodity does change somewhat seasonally in price. It's a little more expensive in the summertime than it is in the winter. But we try to time our entries to the market and the length of our agreements so that we can capture as much savings as possible.
Is this going to bring rate, with a system like this, it's more competition. Will it bring rates generally down?
Well, as competition
Will they plateau,
increases, certainly that will be the inevitable result. The more suppliers that are participating in the market, the better it will be for the consumers. Right now, the deregulation program is just beginning to have effect in the regulatory system, and so very few suppliers have come into New York at this point competing for business. When we go out to bid on programs, we might get 3 or 4 bids. We would hope in a couple of years we'd get 5 or 10 on a program. But right now, there is competition. It's not, as much as we think it's going to be, but the reason to put a group together now is to be ready down the road to be even a bigger player on the consumer side of the table.
Because here's the fear. it's going to open up, and a legitimate question that many small businesses have asked is, am I really going to be the beneficiary when all is said and done? Or is it really going to be the big buyers, the big users, the big companies that are going to get cherry-picked by providers out there because they're easy to come in, they got a high demand, I give you this price, sell you, and then they're kind of then out of that community marketplace, and you've lost the opportunity to join them with the smaller businesses that a lot of these folks aren't going to come in and sell because it's too much work and the return isn't enough to go out there and worry about ABC Pizza Parlor down the corner and saving them a few $100s. So what is very important for areas like us now is early in this process to get the business community to buy into the ethic, the spirit of coming together, aggregating demand. The big guys will save just like they were always going to, but they'll also help pull along savings for the small guys we can aggregate, who otherwise probably won't at the end of the day get the same kinds of savings that we'll be able to help them get by pooling their demand to go after the best possible price. It's strategically critical that we do this now before competition fractures that market. The more that we can pool it together right from the start, hold it together, stay in solidarity that we're going to stay a common market of electricity buyers and hold together to the chamber, the better off everybody's going to be.
What kind of savings are we talking about initially? What kind of savings will people see?
Right now, in NYSEG, each utility territory is a little bit different in the way the programs are set up because of the way the Public Service Commission restructured those particular companies. In NYSEG territory right now, we're able to bring approximately 4% savings to the end user. In Niagara Mohawk, it's a little bit less than that.
And that'll be at the very start, that they, as soon as they sign the contract with you, they'll see the savings?
Yeah.
And as more join?
Yeah, what happens, what happens, and this relates to a previous question, when you take your commodity service from a supplier instead of from the utility deducts what you would have paid them for the commodity, and that's called a shopping credit. It's the amount they subtract when you go to another company for that portion of your service. They're still going to be your delivery company for 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour, but that 3.5 or 4 cents they were charging you for the commodity, that comes off. You go and buy that for 3.3 from somebody else, and you put 4 mils in your pocket. That's how it works. You take 3.7 off the utility bill, and you substitute 3.3.
But somebody's losing that money, the difference.
No, this is competition.
You just lowered their price.
Yeah, the utility is selling you electricity at a regulated price. It's more or less their cost of getting it to you, but you now have the opportunity to buy it from somebody else at a lower price.
When they say blue light special, that's just what they mean.
Usually when there's a middleman involved, prices go up. Are you saying in this case?
It's not a middleman. There is no middleman here. You are going to be buying electricity directly from the provider. Really, just like you have been in the past, just that now you aren't wedded to one provider. Now you can go out and pick a provider of your power. So there is no middleman. That provider isn't, A power company isn't selling to B power company who's then selling to you. That isn't the way it is. You're buying directly from A, whereas before all you could do is buy from F.
But aren't
You get your bill from that company.
Yes.
And also from you get 2 bills, right?
No.
Yeah, you're going to get a bill for the delivery service
From NYSEG.
From NYSEG
Or Dymo.
utility. Right.
It'll be less than your present bill from them because the actual electricity use is going to be out of it. So it's just going to reflect that basic transmission services and so on that they will always be doing for you.
Right. Then your commodity electricity is going to be separately billed. So you have 2 bills.
And that bill will
And
come
together, they will add up to less than your present bill.
Example, maybe to make it simpler. What happened, it used to be phone companies, everything was one company. You got your long distance from that company, you got your basic dial tone, everything was with the phone company. Then it broke up. Now you're getting a bill from AT&T or MCI or Sprint or PrimeLink or whatever for your long distance. You're still getting a bill from Bell Atlantic for your basic service, and even that now is starting to break up more. But it's the same thing that's happening with power.
And who will the bill from your usage come from?
The supplier that is the successful
Bidder from
supplier
NYSEG.
to the bidder, right. And in our case right now, it's a company called NYSEG Solutions, which is an affiliate of
Like the
Energy
baby doll.
East, which is the holding company that includes NYSEG, the utility.
Okay.
They won the bid, they had the best price, so that was why they got it. We have other programs where somebody else's affiliate has been the successful supplier in a given utility territory. So we're not, it just happened to work out well for NYSEG Solutions that they had a good price for NYSEG customers.
This is for companies now, why not individuals?
Well, residential, I don't know what the Chamber's program is for residential members. We could certainly, for businesses that are being operated in a residential setting, as far as I'm concerned, there would be no barrier to them joining the program. For the ordinary homeowner, they would be able to do what any other account can do, and that is to see if they can find a supplier that would offer them a price.
What we have discussed, and I expect it's something we may do, but we first want to concentrate on pulling the business community together. But that would be at some point down the road, opening this up to residential accounts for employees of businesses affiliated with the Chamber. So that, for example, Georgia Pacific in the city won't be participating in this because they're in the muni system, but they have already expressed an interest in potentially extending this as an employee benefit. Oh, you live in Shazy, because you work for us, so you can go and get these savings. I anticipate that we will do something along that line down the road, but it's too much to take on right now. Right now, we want to focus on getting the message to the business community out there and getting them on board, and then down the road explore the possibility of extending it to their employees for home accounts.
So the biggest savings, though, you're starting to say the biggest savings could probably be a year from now when there's more companies.
That's right. What you got is immediate savings, and the message to them out there is, let us tell you, we'll tell you up front, just send this form in, you're not obligated to sign up. We'll come back and tell you, this is what, under the existing contract, we can save you. Then they sign a contract, they know they're getting that savings then almost immediately, but then the strong message that we're conveying to them too is, also realize what you're doing is forming a pool that we're going to attach to all these other chamber pools across the state, and later this year, we're going to go back out and rebid this, and it's unimaginable that we won't end up with savings in our, to some degree, even better than what we're able to tell you now.
So pretty much a domino effect, and
Yes.
once one starts, just
That's
right
right.
across the board. Okay.
It's like any kind of commodity. The bigger bulk purchase you can make of it, whether it's newsprint or videotapes of it, the bigger numbers you can buy it in, the better price you can get.
Gary, 6 months later, after they've signed a contract, you guys get another break. Will that be passed on to the original signer, or will they have to run through their contract period?
Yet to be determined.
Yeah, yet to be determined. We have to figure out how we pull all these chambers together who are now signing in at different periods of time. I got a feeling we're probably going to come up with some kind of compromise initial contract period that's reasonable so we can probably pull the pool together. But then sometime within the next year at the outside, we will bring them the next stage of savings. And then it'll become kind of a routine rolling period that will come up and go back out.
The other question I had was, the economic development zone businesses, will they be eligible for this program also?
I would encourage them to send it in, and we'll see if we can save them money. Now, they're already getting a discount, I know, because they're in an EDZ zone. So whether there's still room, or whether this will still be able to generate them additional savings, I would say let's not guess on that. Have them send in a form, and we'll check it out and see.
You take Essex, Clinton, Franklin counties that are involved in this?
Yes, all.
Well,
Countywide.
NYSEG doesn't go into all those counties. NYMO
Yes.
does. How does that?
NYMO is more complicated in the setup that they presently have as they're kicking into deregulation. It's a little less predictable. It's not quite as much of an assured savings as NYSEG, but there are savings there of a couple percent.
Couple percent. So
Where
we
the
want
NYSEG
NIMO customers.
Where
to-
NYSEG customers are, which would be some of Al's
Yeah,
towns.
we
And it's a
want,
simpler program than NYSEG, but there are savings in both areas, and people in all three of those counties, businesses should send the
NYSEG is
form.
in the pool,
They should send the form in and let us tell them what we can save.
or NYMO is in the
Yes.
pool.
yes, now the only type of accounts that we probably can't work with on the electric side are the municipal.
Unis, sure.
Yeah.
So anybody else is welcome.
Use the telephone example, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find people who think they're saving money
on their telephone bill with all the different bills they're getting. What's to prevent the delivery charges from going up? Is there anything regulating delivery charges?
It's no different than it is now. It's subject to Public Service Commission oversight and regulation now. It will be tomorrow, so that really isn't a factor in the decision. That will continue to be regulated by the state because that
PSC.
continues to be a monopoly situation.
What's subject to competition is about a third of your bill, which is the commodity portion, and that's 3-point-something cents, seasonally adjusted. But on your long-distance telephone, I can remember 20 years ago paying 80 cents a minute to call my in-laws in South Carolina. Who would pay 80 cents a minute for long-distance telephone today?
Yeah. I know.
I mean, the total amount of my bill hasn't gone down, but I'm using a lot more things. And one of the things we foresee in energy deregulation and competition is the introduction of additional services. In the not-too-distant future, they're going to unbundle meter reading. And there's going to be new technologies on the electric meter that may not require a human being to come to the back of your house every month like they've been doing since 1908 without any difference.
Yeah, but my dog looked forward to that. Wait,
Your dog will go into withdrawal. But there will be technologies that allow meters to be read from a central office or from a passing vehicle and may convey other information about how you're using electricity so that you can modulate your appliances and all this sort of thing. There's a lot of exciting technology that will hit the system because we're now starting to unbundle and give people the opportunity to make choices. And it's the whole basis of the economy today, is making choices and giving the consumer the power to make decisions that we couldn't make 20 years ago, or even in the electric case, 5 years ago. So
It's something that didn't happen with phone deregulation or with most other forms of deregulation that kicked in and have a business impact. They didn't do what we're doing with this. They didn't come together early on and say, let's pool and make sure we get the maximum advantage out of this.
I'm trying to understand this here. So with the phone companies, when that was deregulated, you had all these baby bells, and that's why there was a lot of competition. In this case, it's not the electric companies that are breaking up. You're saying that your provider group is going to come and buy from all these different electric companies so that they can...
no, your
No.
premise is
Explain it.
wrong and your conclusion is wrong.
Okay, explain.
The electric utility was a vertically integrated monopoly for 100 years. And it did everything from generate the electricity, interstate highway system, transmission grid, the local distribution system, all the way to the house, and they own the meter too. Okay? They did everything. Now, that service is being unbundled. So you have transmission and distribution is in the old utility company. It's still a regulated monopoly. What's not part of that anymore is the power plants. The utilities have sold their power plants to other companies. And those companies that own the power plants and are generating electricity, they're competing for customers. They're not competing to sell to a distribution company. They're competing to get to the consumer. And the utility companies have to give them access to the distribution system. And they have to give them access according to this big wholesale auction that goes on every hour. Prices are modulated at the independent system operator that runs the interstate transmission system. So that's what's happening, okay? Now the consumer can choose among all of these companies that are generating electricity and pay 3.1 cents or 3.3 cents or 3.7 cents, depending on who's offering to them.
Now, who services? If there's an outage?
You mean like-
NYMO has a fleet,
The same, the same.
this NYMO would service?
All of the wires and transmission and distribution facilities are still the property of the local utility, Niagara Mohawk.
They're
or
still
New York State
responsible
Electric
for getting
Gas.
that to you.
They are still the regulated company that has to make sure that you have service, whoever you're getting the commodity from.
That's not a bad deal.
No,
They also are, in the worst-case scenario, if people want to imagine ghosts and goblins out there that could happen. And they think, well, gee, I'm buying power from some new provider I don't know, and it's Joe's power company, and Joe takes the money and goes to Costa Rica and shuts down the power plant. Well, am I out of power? Mine says my power go out the next day. No, absolute worst case scenario, the old utilities are still responsible and are still the provider of last resort and would kick in, so there'd never be an interruption. There's always an absolute worst case fallback. And in the meantime, you got whatever savings.
So what you have now is you have, for better or worse, the same reliability you've always had, but at a lower cost, because the commodity element of this has been reduced. Now, I sometimes another analogy is you got UPS delivering things from LL Bean, okay? It's not one company, okay? One of them has the product, the other one delivers it. That's what we've got set up here.
Now, if next year you get a bid from Ohio Electric and Light or something that's lower than NYSEG, who takes care of the lines?
Same.
As long as NYSEG owns the line.
Same. Again, the utility is still the owner of all the wires and transmission facilities.
Who do they charge for their repair of the work?
They charge the consumer, because you're going to still pay, right now you're paying 11 or 12 cents per kilowatt hour for all your electricity in one unbundled service, or one bundled service, I should say. Now, 8.5 of that, or thereabouts, is the transmission distribution. You're paying delivery, you're paying maintenance, you're paying for whatever construction and transformers have to be installed throughout their system.
But that cost remains constant.
And that's all the same as it always was, and they have to go to the Public Service Commission to get that rate approved. They have to say, well, we're making prudent investments here, we want to recover our costs. And the PSC says, well, as long
You're
as
just
they're
going to see it on
approved.
two separate pieces
Right.
of paper.
So
Are you
still-
saying that cost still remains there, only it's going to be lower?
No, that cost is going to stay the same.
That cost stays the same?
Right, what's changing is the commodity.
Right.
The actual electricity cost.
Not the wires, but the commodity, the electrons, are now subject to competition, and that's about 3.5, 4 cents of your.
That cost would be reflected in the wheeling charge?
No, that's just the commodity. It's just the
Transmission
commodity.
charge?
You get the commodity now, and then the transmission delivers it to you. They charge you one price for that entire service. Now you break out the commodity.
And your
How
service
much was
charge
the
is
transmission
that.
worth? It was commodity minus from the total, okay? So now you've got 8.5 cents of transmission, it's still 8.5 cents of transmission. You add 3.5, 4 cents on top of that, that's your commodity.
And that's where the
And
savings are.
that's where the savings
The
are.
savings there are now, more to come.
And when we talk about a percentage of savings, we're talking about a percentage of the total bill, not just a percentage of that commodity
That's
portion.
important to realize. The 2 to 4% savings will be in comparison against that total bill, including the two together. Which means it's a significant savings.
So if you were spending $100 a month on your electric bill, and you saved 4%, you'd be saving $4 a month.
So your savings will come from just the distribution part of the bill,
No.
not the
No,
transmission?
no, no,
Commodity.
the other part. The power part,
Commodity.
the actual electricity.
Distribution.
Commodity part, yeah.
Commodity.
Yeah. Not the transmission, no.
Right.
That cost will always remain the same or whatever.
That'll be the regulated price.
Somebody's going to have
You
to,
can't bid
they're
on
always
that.
going to have, somebody's always going to have to
That's
do
not
that, they're always going to do it, it'll always be regulated, just as it is now.
Everybody's pretty well glazed over.
I still can't get past, if people are paying less, somebody's getting less money. If everybody's paying this 4% less, somebody's not getting it.
Probably been a good idea, Gary, is have a bill.
Yeah, the one who's
Show
not
them.
getting it right now is the person not taking advantage of the savings they're leaving on the table.
No, I mean, the person that they're paying is not going to be getting this extra money. Who is it?
NYSEG is selling to you guys cheaper than they do to the companies.
It's the utilities themselves in the short term. But they don't see it that way really, because they know this transition is underway and they want to help nurse it along because it's here, it's reality, it's happening, and people are going to move and compete within the next couple of years entirely anyways. So if you want to look at it very narrowly, it's money out of NYSEG's or NYMO's pocket in the short term.
The utility
But-
company. It's just selling it cheaper.
But they don't, what's interesting and dynamic about this is, they're not worried about that, and they don't see it that way. They want to compete for the new customers, because they know they got to get good at that, and they got to start doing that, because they want to remain the provider long-term and be competitive.
If you went to some grocery store, independent little 7-Eleven type of shop, and you bought a gallon of milk for $3, and then the next week you went around and you went to the supermarket and you got a gallon of milk for $2.50, would you say, who isn't getting the money? No, you saved money.
You
You bought the
saved
same
money.
kind of commodity, you just paid less for it.
Competition.
It's competition.
What we're not used to
But
is
the
that this is
convenience
something.
store lost the business, because you went to the other
That's
store.
right.
Yeah.
But the
So
person gets it.
NICEAG's losing the business.
Well,
Well,
NICEAG is the,
Well-
NICEAG the utility.
They will
Okay?
lose, they
They
will
have
lose,
to.
yes, you're absolutely right, they will lose
Yeah,
some money
you're
in the
right.
short term.
they won't lose the business, they'll
They will
lose money.
lose some money in the short term versus if that customer didn't do this now and left that money on the table for the utility.
They're not losing any profit, because they're charging you now. They don't any longer generate electricity. NICEAG, the utility, does not own any power plants. So when they're selling you electricity, they have to go and buy it, and then they sell it to you. And they maybe mark up a little bit for their administrative cost on the way through, but they're not making any money on that. All right? 3.7 cents is what you're paying for that, per kilowatt hour.
I mean, they just passed it along at cost.
They just passed it, basically, that's what they're allowed to do now in the new world of unbundled service. Because if they could, no, they don't make any money on that. They're just, they
So
make a
they
regulated
turn
profit
it
on
into-
distribution, they pass through the cost of the commodity.
Mhm.
Okay? So then you go out and you find the same type of commodity from some other source at a lesser price. NICEAG sells, they don't buy so much anymore. So that releases more generation capacity into the marketplace.
They only buy what they need.
They only buy what they need, and they know
Don't
how
have
much
to
they need
generate
because they know how much you use.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world, the way electricity is being handled.
And they couldn't mark that up because it was regulated?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they would have if they could.
And now electricity, what we're coming to is electricity, the commodity isn't regulated anymore except by the marketplace. So what we want to get ready to do is make sure we can go out there and make the marketplace work for our members.
Gary, will you be sending all this information out to all your chamber members?
Yes, there's a letter and information has gone out to a number of our members. It'll be in the March 1st newsletter. We're doing this sort of thing, we're going to be talking about it in meetings. Everybody's going to get sick over
What
the
is it,
next year of
40-page
hearing
letter
from us
you
about
sent
this, because until every single NICEAG and NIMO business customer out there in the 3 counties has signed up for this program, we're going to keep talking about it.
So we
until
should
get to this.
solicit some of the businesses that are not your members. and let-
Absolutely, I mean, you will have to be a member of the chamber to take advantage of the program. However, you don't have to be a member of the chamber to call, get the form from us and find out how much you can save. There's a very good chance you're going to find out you're going to save more than it would cost to be a member of the chamber.
Oh, so WP is a member of the chamber also in order to participate in this program, right?
That's right. But
What they'll save.
I suspect most businesses out there are going to find they're going to save more, and some of them are going to save many, many times more on this program than the few $100 dues it would be for the chamber.
When did this, according to this, it says deregulation is beginning.
Yes.
When did this start and how?
Last year, after about 4 or 5 years of proceedings before the Public Service Commission in Albany, began, for NICEAG customers, it began August of last year. For NIMO customers, it was beginning gradually during most of last year.
After 45 minutes, I think, what I'm seeing now is, Gary's saying don't get bogged down in the details.
No.
Just think of the savings, and I guess that's
What we're
that's the
talking
bottom
about
line.
here is a group buying program that's going to save members money.
Yeah. The fact that it's a commodity that people aren't used to thinking of that way, just get past that. It's just a commodity.
It won't put your dog out of business yet.
Never, anytime there was a bargain, I never got into much of an argument over how they got there.
I think it's really exciting. I think it's one of the, I keep saying it, but it's one of the most innovative and exciting things this chamber has grabbed a hold of to do for business.
Thank you. Shocking news.
Lecture